She's too ugly to marry. Look at those gruesome facial scars. No respectable man would ever touch a broken, disfigured parasite like her. My Aunt Brenda's sharp, screeching voice cut through the air of the grand conservatory, echoing off the stained glass dome. Over 90 wealthy guests in formal evening attire froze mid-conversation, turning their gazes toward the head table. I stood beside the floral arch in my dark green Marine Corps service dress uniform, my spine rigid, my thumb tracing a small brass key hidden inside my gloved pocket. I was Captain Megan Hayes, a former Marine Corps logistics and reconnaissance officer who had survived a devastating IED explosion in Helmand Province, an ambush that left a jagged, silvery scar stretching from my left collarbone up to my jawline. Beside my aunt on the elevated stage stood my cousin Alexis, wearing a $5,000 silk gown, holding hands with my fiancé, Nathan, who refused to make eye contact with me. Hanging directly behind them was a massive velvet banner that read, "Celebrating Alexis and Nathan, new executive directors of Hayes Logistics." "Aunt Brenda, please," I said, keeping my voice dead even, using the flat, disciplined tone I had honed during combat debriefings. "You sent me an urgent text an hour ago stating that my grandfather's estate attorney needed my physical signature tonight to release his service medals?" "I lied to get you in this room," Brenda shrieked into the microphone, her diamond rings flashing under the chandeliers as a harsh, bitter laughter echoed across the hall. "I wanted everyone in this city to see what a pathetic, delusional failure looks like. You think Nathan brought you here to marry you? He's been sleeping with Alexis for 6 months. They used your combat disability pay to fund this engagement gala." Nathan stepped forward, taking the microphone from Brenda, casting a pitying, dismissive look across the room that made my blood run cold. "It's true, Megan," Nathan murmured into the sound system, his voice dripping with condescending sorrow. "I tried to love you, but your trauma and those scars are just too much. Alexis is whole. She belongs in high society. You belong in a shelter." A cold wave of hostile whispering rippled through the room. High-profile investors, city council members, and shipping executives shook their heads in contempt. Alexis smirked, taking a slow sip of champagne, resting her head on Nathan's shoulder. "She doesn't even have a real job," Brenda screamed, stepping to the edge of the stage. "Security, throw this hideous monster out onto the street before she ruins my daughter's celebration." 2 heavy security guards stepped toward me, their hands reaching for my shoulders. But before their fingers could make contact with my uniform, a tall, iron-jawed man sitting alone at a front-row VIP table set his silver pen down with a loud, distinct click and stood up. He was wearing an impeccably tailored Marine Corps blue dress uniform adorned with a gold oak leaf on each shoulder. Major Daniel Vance, Executive Officer for Marine Corps Special Operations Command. The entire conservatory went dead silent. The 2 security guards froze in their tracks, staring at the Marine Major in absolute shock. "Mrs. Hayes," Major Vance cut through the silence like a steel blade, quiet yet carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Mrs. Hayes, you might want to review your company's classified supply chain contracts before you order security to touch the officer who holds the master federal clearance for every port your ships operate in." Brenda's triumphant smirk dissolved instantly. Nathan's hand trembled on the microphone stand until his knuckles turned ghost white. "Major Vance?" Brenda stuttered into the microphone, her voice losing its icy polish. I think there has been a terrible misunderstanding. This is a private corporate engagement party. Megan is just a low-level, discharged veteran living on government handouts." Major Vance didn't even look at Brenda. He turned toward me, snapped his heels together with a sharp crack, and raised his right hand in a rigid, flawless military salute. Captain Hayes, Operation Iron Ledger has been fully executed by the Naval Criminal Investigation Service. The floor is yours, ma'am. Brenda blinked frantically, looking back and forth between the major and my calm face. What operation? What is he talking about, Nathan? Nathan didn't answer. A single drop of cold sweat rolled down his temple, dripping on his silk lapel. I took 3 deliberate steps forward, my polished dress shoes clicking against the marble floor. I pulled the small brass key from my gloved pocket and held it high under the chandelier lights, the exact key my late grandfather, General Arthur Hayes, had secretly entrusted to me before his passing. 7 years ago, I said, my voice cutting through the silent room with absolute clarity. My grandfather left 51% of Hayes Logistics to me in a locked trust, specifying that my combat service qualified me to oversee federal defense transport. "Don't listen to her," Brenda shrieked, rushing to the front of the stage. "She's unstable. She suffers from severe psychological trauma from her overseas deployments. She forged those documents." I spent 3 years in military hospitals recovering from facial reconstruction and spinal trauma, and during those 3 years, Aunt Brenda told me that Hayes Logistics was bankrupt, that my grandfather's medical debts had wiped out my inheritance, and that if I didn't transfer my monthly military disability checks to Alexis, the family would lose their home. "It was bankrupt," Brenda yelled, her hands shaking violently as she gestured toward the crowd. "Then why," Major Vance spoke up, pulling a heavy blue folder from his briefcase, "does the Federal Maritime Audit show that Captain Hayes's combat disability pay was transferred directly into Alexis's offshore accounts to purchase luxury yachts and real estate in Europe?" The silence in the conservatory was heavy. You could hear the soft trickling of the indoor fountain. Brenda froze as if she had been turned to stone. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You lied to me for 3 years, Aunt Brenda," I said, looking her straight in the eyes, my heart pounding with a mixture of old grief and cold, unyielding resolve. "You told me Nathan was managing my medical trust out of love. You had him convince me that I was too hideous to be seen in public, keeping me isolated in a small cabin, while you, Alexis, and Nathan siphoned over $700,000 of my military pay." "Megan," Nathan stammered, stepping away from Alexis, his voice cracking as he held up his hands. "Megan, listen to me. It wasn't my idea. Your aunt told me that if I didn't play along, she would cut me out of the logistics company. She forced me to engage Alexis." "You spineless coward!" Alexis screamed, turning around and striking Nathan across the face with her jeweled hand. "You were the one who asked my mother for the offshore account details. You wanted the money just as much as we did." "I took it because your mother promised me the CEO title," Nathan yelled back, shoving Alexis away as the high society crowd watched the 3 of them turn on each other like wild animals. Before anyone else could speak, I stepped over to the master control podium. I inserted the small brass key into the hidden audit console beneath the audiovisual desk and turned it 90 degrees. The giant velvet banner behind them automatically retracted, revealing a massive, high-definition LED screen that flickered to life. Instead of promotional videos for Hayes Logistics, the screen displayed a real-time federal audit log from the Department of Defense with red seals, bank routing numbers, and surveillance timestamps. Source account: Captain M. Hayes, Combat Disability, Vet Trust. Destination account: Alexis Hayes Offshore Holdings. Total illegal transfers of $742,000. Classified Port Authority Clearance 88-X, registered solely to Captain Megan Hayes. You thought Hayes Logistics was run by Nathan and Alexis. Nathan didn't secure the defense shipping contracts that saved this company last year. I cleared those contracts through my active military security clearance from my hospital bed.
Nathan stole my digital signature. Using the power of attorney, Aunt Brenda coerced me into signing while I was under sedation. "No, that contract belongs to the family," Brenda shouted, her eyes wild with terror as she stared at the screen. A military power of attorney executed under medical sedation is a federal felony, Mrs. Hayes, Major Vance stated coldly. At that exact moment, the heavy glass doors at the back of the conservatory swang wide open. 6 uniformed federal marshals, accompanied by special agents from the Naval Criminal Investigation Service, NCIS, marched down the central aisle with their tactical boots striking the floor in synchronized rhythm. The lead NCIS special agent walked straight up the steps of the stage, stopping directly between my aunt, cousin, and ex-fiancé. "Brenda Hayes, Alexis Hayes, Nathan Miller," the agent announced, his voice booming clearly across the sound system. "You are under arrest for federal wire fraud, multi-year military disability theft, corporate identity forgery, and treasonous misuse of defense logistics clearances."
"Get your hands off me," Brenda shrieked as a female marshal pulled her arms behind her back, the sharp, heavy click-click of steel handcuffs locking over her wrists. "Do you know who I am? I am Brenda Hayes. I run the city's Maritime Foundation." "Your foundation," the agent replied with absolute indifference, "was frozen 1 hour ago following Captain Hayes's submission of sworn affidavits and forensic bank ledgers." Nathan offered no resistance. He dropped to his knees on the stage floor, weeping hysterically, his hands cuffed behind his back. Alexis screamed and kicked, her expensive silk dress tearing along the seam as she was hauled toward the exit, her status destroyed in front of every reporter in the city. "Megan, stop them, please!" Brenda sobbed, her face contorted in desperate, ugly panic as she was dragged past the stage steps. "We are your family. You can't let strangers put your own blood in prison." I stood straight, my shoulders back, my chin high, looking at my aunt with calm, unshakable dignity. "You told me I was too ugly to be loved, Aunt Brenda," I said softly, my voice carrying across the entire room. "But these scars were earned serving my country. Your scars are on your soul, and no amount of stolen money will ever hide them." As the federal marshals marched my aunt, cousin, and ex-fiancé down the aisle, past a crowd of disgusted investors who were already canceling their contracts, Major Vance stepped alongside me. He didn't offer empty words of sympathy. He simply offered a crisp, solemn nod of utter respect. Slowly, every shipping executive, city official, and veteran in the room stood up from their tables, breaking into a thunderous, rising ovation that echoed off the glass dome, honoring the true officer who had stood her ground against absolute deceit. I took a deep, clean breath of air, feeling the heavy burden of 3 years of betrayal dissolve into the quiet certainty of earned justice. You cannot cure toxic people by sacrificing your dignity, your body, or your truth. For 3 long years, I allowed my family to manipulate my physical scars and my emotional pain, believing that my endurance and my silence were proof of my devotion to my grandfather's legacy. I let them insult my appearance, diminish my service, and steal my hard-earned combat disability pay because I believed that keeping the peace was worth any personal cost. But manipulative, greedy people do not view your patience as love. They view it as permission to exploit you further. They will use your deepest wounds against you, dismantle your self-worth, and publicly humiliate you, all while convincing the world that you are broken. Real peace does not come from quietly hiding your scars to protect people who hurt you. Real peace comes from wearing your scars with pride, standing firm in your integrity, stepping into the light of truth, and allowing the unyielding consequences of their own choices to destroy their lies. Never set yourself on fire to keep toxic people warm.